What is going on, guys? Slick B here, and today we are back in the world of War Thunder for something a little new on this channel. Now, this is going to be my best comprehensive review of the Chieftain Mark III, a new vehicle for patch 1.57. Now, this is the most hyped vehicle. Everybody was super excited for this, and I don't know how they still feel about it. People who have it love the gun, love the turret traverse and the depression of the gun. It does pretty well at killing things, but it also has some major weak spots. So we're going to point those out, talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to talk about any historical accuracy, or I'm not going to go read the Wikipedia. I'm not going to talk about how this tank was in real life because it's in the game. This is a game review. This is about the tank in the game. And while Gaijin strives to make a very accurate representation of the historical tank, there are going to be some inaccuracies, and, you know, I can't blame them for that. So let's get into the armor, because that's arguably the most important thing on a tank next to the gun. The armor is going to keep you alive, keep your crew alive, and the gun is going to kill other things, which is what you pretty much want to do. Now, looking at the front here, the turret is very weird. The right side of the turret is a lot more thick than the left side of the turret. Left side is a 125, slope back at a bunch of different angles and such. But I haven't really had a lot of trouble bouncing off my turret, except for right here. I have gotten hit right here once, and that penetrated, which is pretty interesting. But that is such a obscure shot that it usually won't happen, right? So we have a bunch of random bounce spots all along the side here, and those will bounce. Top of the turret, which, you know, 90% of the time you probably won't get caught at this angle anyway, and this is such a high angle, but just for the giggles, the top of the turret is 25 and 50 in the front. Now, this is the biggest weakness of this tank, this lower plate right here. 76.2 millimeters, slope back at a 45. This thing can get penned by anything at tier 5, anything. The upper plate is a little bit better, especially looking at the front. It ends up being like 240. It's sloped back at super high angles, like 70, 75. But the lower plate is just so big. It can really, and the tank sits high off the ground, as you can see here. It's not like the lower plate's down here and the tank's a very low tank. It sits high, it's proud. And you can really get hit if you're going over some hills and stuff like that. So you got to be wary about it. That's a constant thing you need to worry about. Now, last but not least, we have some spaced armor on the side, but the actual hull itself is 37 millimeters on the side, 37 millimeters on the back. Even with this spaced armor, ZSU 57s will pen you. Any tier 5 AA actually will pen you in the side and just really, really ruin your day. So the tank armor, I would give it out of 10, I would say the armor on this tank is probably a 5. The only effective armor you have is the turret. Now, we'll x-ray the tank to see how the ammo is laid out. Yeah, very interesting, I know. So the driver sits in the middle, surrounded by ammo. This is a bad day. If you get penned in the side, you almost want them to shoot at the turret, but if whoever's shooting you from the side isn't shooting at the turret, they're going to hit an ammo rack or this huge engine. The engine is massive. But, I mean, you know, most tanks, when they get penetrated, get hurt anyway. Let's take a look at the modifications real quick. Now, this is armed with a 120 millimeter rifled Royal Ordnance gun. It is the same gun, I believe, that's on the Conqueror. Let me just check that real quick, just so people don't. QF TK L1A1. No, this is the BL TK L11. So it's not the same gun, but same, you know what I mean. Now, it has two shell types right off the bat. You don't unlock any from upgrading. And it has Sabo and Hesh. I don't use a lot of Hesh, but I mean, 150 pen all around, not too bad. And if you do end up penning with Hesh, even though it doesn't pen, it kind of, if you don't know how Hesh works, I don't really feel like explaining it right now, but Hesh doesn't really pen, so to speak. It kind of does some other things. But Hesh and Sabo. Now, this is a very big disadvantage for this tank, because all the other tanks pretty much at this tier, the 105s, use heat fin stabilized rounds that pen up to like 400 millimeters of armor. And not only do they pen up to 400 millimeters armor, because the Sabo does too, they explode in the tank. They have high explosive filler. They do more damage when they pen. So this is just a straight Sabo round, which has the penetrator. But you can still do a lot of damage with it, and I have gotten one-shots, fortunately. Now, the penetration on this gun is fantastic, and the drop-off when you're aiming in-game is very, very good. Looking at some of the upgrades that this thing has, I don't have many upgrades. I have the parts, the tracks, and the fire. Now, hopefully, this engine adds a little bit of acceleration. It says 0.5. Because this tank is slow as molasses for how it looks, at least comparative to how it looks and against other tanks of its caliber. The Leopard will dust this thing in a race, no problem. But that's enough talking about the tank in the garage. Let's talk about the tank in-game. Alright guys, so we are watching, well, at least I'm watching myself play in-game right now, and it's not really the best quality for me to watch due to me watching through Sony Vegas. Okay, it's a little weird disclaimer, but let's talk about this tank in-game and how it performs. The best thing that I think you could do is, you could see I'm doing it now, I hold up against a dead tank. This is just a map fixture, so it's not going to disappear, it's permanently on the map, and they are not going to be able to see my lower plate. So you hide that lower glacis at all possible times. And another tip I would say for using this tank in-game is try to fight the long-range engagements. Most tanks, especially the Russian tanks that you face, don't have as accurate as a gun. The 120mm that this tank has is fantastic. It's super accurate. The 122s that you'll face from the Russian side are not that accurate, at least at long range. The round is very heavy and it drops off fast because they don't have the whole Sabo thing. Sabo rounds don't fall off, they go very straight. So it's also easier for you to deal with the long range engagement once you get the ranging down. It's not a very high elevation to, hit the shell over something. It's not like a big gas, you're not like arcing it a lot, kind of like a KV2. You'd have to really lob a shell. This gun, you kind of just aim and throw it maybe a centimeter up and then shoot, and you'll hit whatever you want to hit. So this also brings me to the next point of how you have to play this tank. You have to strategically shoot your opponents. So if you see an enemy tank, you don't want to just shoot where you can. You need to take that extra second and try to hit something that will knock him out and stop him from shooting at you. 9 times out of 10, especially if you're playing the Russian tanks, they will one-shot you if they have a good shot on your lower plate, and sometimes they'll even one-shot you through the turret. So you need to knock out their loader and gunner immediately. This round has no problem penetrating most surfaces on any tank. I pen the pike of a IS-3 at, like 500 meters super easily. And the pike meaning not even the flat surface, just the direct point where the armor plates meet. It's just so easy to penetrate. So you don't really have to worry too much about bouncing off enemy tanks. That means just really take the time to aim. Shooting into the turret and trying to knock out the gunners might be a better situation than just shooting at the ammo. Now, when you do shoot the ammo, you can knock it out in one shot. I've done it before, but it's kind of hit or miss. Mostly, I think it depends on the enemy, how much ammo they are carrying, because sometimes you could be shooting into an empty rack and the overlay system doesn't show that. It just shows where the ammo is. It doesn't show how full it is. So you could be shooting into an empty rack, and I think that's what happens in a lot of situations when you shoot into the ammo rack and it says it's red. Yeah, you hit the ammo rack and it's red. You would have destroyed it, but there's no shells in there. So maybe that's one of the biggest issues that we have with War Thunder. But another thing is you can always knock out other people's guns. You know that you can do this. You hit their gun or where their gun is, it's going to penetrate, it's going to knock out the gun and give the enemy shooting back at you a whole bunch of trouble. Another thing about the Chieftain that I think you have to take some time to get to know, and this is just with playing, you have to know where you can go with this tank. It is slow and not fast. It is not fast. It looks fast. It is not. I'm here to tell you it's not. The truth hurts. It doesn't mean it's a bad tank because it's not fast, but it just can't get to these spots that you would want to use it in. There are leopard spots that I use that this tank would work fantastic in, but you just can't get there fast enough. You cannot get there fast enough. So Play the tank to its strengths, find some spots that you really like on certain maps that you can get to within a reasonable amount of time, and you can hold off and kind of plot. This is more of an ambush tank due to its speed than an offensive tank. You're going to want to chill in the back, find a good sniping spot, wait for the enemies to push, and then push out after you've killed, whatever your share was, your fair share. Overall, I would say this tank was a good and needed addition to the British tech tree. I'm very happy it was added. It makes me want to play. The Conqueror didn't do the job that this thing can do. Although the Conqueror is slow and it still has a 120mm gun, the armor on it was a little iffy at first. It's slower than this tank, and it just doesn't feel the same. I feel like this tank was needed, and I'm glad it was added. So that being said, go grind for your chieftains. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any comments that you want to speak about this tank or anything that you like about it, you don't like about it, comment down below. And if you have any questions or suggestions on what I should do reviewing next, or what I should be reviewing next for patch 1.57, you tell me. I'm thinking maybe the Doniers. It's a very hard thing to cover, either the Doniers or the TA, but for the TA, I'd like to wait for the proper flight model. Right now, it does not have a good flight model. So, it's been your boy Slick. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.